Hello and welcome to the ScatterVolt channel, and today I'm going to be reviewing the RTX 3050 with its updated pricing to answer whether or not it's worth it in mid-2022. So as the story goes, originally when this card came out, it had a set MSRP of $250. Those we all know that wasn't going to stay, so it rose immediately above $400 due to markups. And for the time being, when this card first came out, it was considered a bad buy just because to actually get it, you would again have to spend upwards of $400. And in terms of its performance, the Radeon RX 6600 was a better buy for the same price, or in some cases less than this RTX 3050. However, 3 months on from this graphics card and pricing for it has gotten significantly better, so I'm paying a revisit to this graphics card to give it an updated review. But we'll be doing that through this Galax RTX 3050EX. If you want to see more updated or revisited graphics card review videos now that they're becoming more in stock, available, and not ridiculously marked up in price, then consider liking this video. It'll tell me if I should make more of them, and if you like this video in particular and my style of presenting, consider subscribing. And don't worry, more videos are coming. I'm just taking my time. I'm being patient. So we're gonna get right into the meat of this video, so stay with me. But first, I gotta give a thank you to our two sponsors. Number one being me. I'm selling some tech and some gaming PCs and other stuff that I don't need anymore on my website with some pretty good discounts, all with free shipping. So if you wanna check out any of that stuff, I'll have a link to that in the description. It's my online garage sale that I'm just using to clean up the studio, and to VIP SED key. If you're looking to activate Windows 10 for cheap on your brand new gaming PC, then don't hesitate to check out VIPSEDkey.com, where you can get inexpensive Windows 10 Home, Pro, or even Windows 11 keys. If you use my discount code VIPScatter, you can get a healthy percentage off your order and get Windows 10 keys for as low as $15 using their website. And activating them only takes a matter of minutes. You just go ahead and take the key that you receive from their website, put it right into the Windows activation settings, and within a few minutes, you should have an activated version of Windows 10 or Windows 11. So if you want to check them out and my discount code, then click the link at the top of the description. So real quick, I'm going to provide a lightning fast overview of the 3050 if you don't already know what's up with it. But first, I'm going to start with its updated pricing, which right now on Amazon US costs as low as $380. On Newegg, you can get this card for as low as $330, and if you are lucky and live near a micro center, you can get it for as low as $310, which is very, very positive to see. I mean, yeah, it's still $60 over MSRP, but still dramatically better than where this card was back in January. Other than that though, 8 GB of GDDR6 memory, 2,560 CUDA cores, and with that memory, you have a 128-bit memory bus. Just need to mention that real quick. This can go up to 1.78 GHz stock, though you can obviously overclock this graphics card. It supports DLSS, it supports ray tracing, and it supports PCI Gen 4.0. So I'd say the standout feature for this Galax RTX 3050EX in particular are the two front 92mm RGB fans, which when you have those plugged into the topmost slot of your motherboard will provide some nice ambient lighting to your gaming PC, which is more for the aesthetics. And in terms of cooling and temperatures and noise levels, don't worry about that with this RTX 3050. You don't need a massively big cooler to cool off the RTX 3050 itself. It isn't that, power hungry of a graphics card that's going to produce a ton of heat. So in terms of temperatures and noise rating, this shouldn't be a worry. But now let's get into what matters with this graphics card, that being the value and its current competition, which for about $330 on Newegg competes right with the Radeon RX 6600, which can go as low as $330 as we've seen recently. Both of them have the same amount of memory in terms of size, so 8 GB of GDDR6 memory. But for those of you who think this is already going to be a win for the RX 6600, have to remember that this card officially supports ray tracing and nvidia DLSS, which we will be factoring into our value analysis at the end of this video near the conclusions. So beginning with Forza Horizon 5 at 1080p ultra settings, there is a decisive win for the RX 6600 in this scenario. The RTX 3050 actually doesn't have that huge of a lead over the 1660 Super. I mean, yes, it's above 60 frames per second, but the 6600 is pushing 90, which should be a bit of a notice, though that narrative quickly changes for Grand Theft Auto 5 because at very high settings with an anti-aliasing set to 4x for MSAA, here surprisingly the 3050 actually pulls off its one win against the RX 6600 for just pure raw performance without ray tracing or DLSS. I don't know why, I ran the 6600 result like 3 times and it just kept being around 90 frames per second. So I had to take this result. So I guess for Grand Theft Auto 5 in particular just doesn't like that Radeon card. But then going on to Rainbow Six Siege using the Vulkan API, here the 6600 does win, though the 3050 also pulls above 300 frames per second. Though I guess in this instance, just look at how big the difference is between those two cards and the 1660 Super. That is an old card. You should never consider it going forward. If anything, if you just wanted an NVIDIA branded card for about the price you were originally going to pay for a 1660 Super brand new, just get a 3050. But now this is where it gets a little bit sticky because I decided to run a few benchmarks on Crysis Remastered. So with raw performance, no DLSS or ray tracing, the 6600 has a pretty big lead over the 3050, and surprisingly the 3050 didn't gap the 1660 Super that much, which is a bit surprising to see. But now if we turn on DLSS for the RTX 3050, which is just exclusive to that card, we get 70 frames per second on average, which is still slower than the non-DLSS result of the RX 6600, which is a bit surprising. Now, if we go on to ray tracing and we turn that on for the RX 6600 and the RTX 3050, surprisingly, the RX 6600 pulled out a better result than the RTX 3050, which really surprised me. I thought this was maybe just a game-specific result for Crysis, but it's officially supported on NVIDIA's website for ray tracing and DLSS, so that was a bit odd to see. Though again, we can make up some of those deficits for the RTX 3050 in that result if we turn on DLSS at the same time as well as ray tracing, and there we get a more acceptable result closer to raw performance of 68.3 frames per second for the 3050. But now we move on to the gauntlet, Fortnite, and I ran like 4 different tests for these cards. So beginning with just Fortnite by itself, no ray tracing or DLSS at high settings 1080p, the RX 6600 is above 144 frames per second on average at 1080p. The 3050 is a good way behind by just about 30 frames per second, and it's actually only about 20 frames per second faster than the 1660 Super, so here I think the results are pretty well spaced out. Though if we turn on DLSS, this is where the 3050 pulls massively ahead over the RX 6600. So I guess those of you who are Fortnite junkies are really going to like this 3050 if you're just going to be using DLSS to really pump up your frame rates. So that is really positive for the 3050. Though if we turn on ray tracing with no DLSS on the 3050 versus the 6600, the 3050 wins, but not by a whole lot. And the 6600 also definitely suffers in this comparison too on my Fortnite benchmark map. If anything, this should be a little bit of a describer for things to come, for my future opinions on the 3050 and how good its actual ray tracing performance really is. But we can make up all those lost gains and more if we turn on DLSS in addition to ray tracing for the 3050, and then we're getting a much more acceptable frame rate of about 90.5 on average at 1080p for the 3050. And then I wanted to close out the benchmarks with some Godfall benchmarks because this is a game that supports AMD Fidelity FX, which is of course not as good as DLSS, but it is a form of upscaling technology that's available on both NVIDIA and AMD cards to increase frame rate or increase the fidelity of the game you're playing. So with none of that, actually, the 6600 does have a comfortable lead over the 3050, though not by that much. But then if we turn on AMD Fidelity FX scaling, where I have that set to the ultra quality preset, again in epic settings, here the 6600 does have a comfortable lead over the 3050 once again. So what can we draw from these results and conclude whether or not the RTX 3050 is going to be worth it currently in the year 2022? Well, in terms of raw performance, this is pretty much going to get slapped by the 6600 all around, at least for 1080p gaming, which is something I would place a lot of emphasis on because one of the main selling points of the 3050 is that it supports DLSS and ray tracing, though, as we just saw from the benchmarks, you don't get a 3050 for ray tracing. Without any DLSS, the ray tracing performance of the 3050 is pretty subpar, if not sometimes worse than the 6600. And in terms of DLSS, yes, that can massively boost the frame rate for the 3050 in a few select games. And if you look at the list of DLSS supported games, unless you're going into, say, like building your next gaming PC or choosing what your next graphics card upgrade is, and you already know what games you're going to be playing, and if one of those games so happens to support DLSS, that is one game out of many that you could be potentially playing on your gaming PC, and you have to ask if it's worth using AI upscaling to make up for the performance deficits for this card, say, versus the 6600. I actually went ahead and looked at that list of DLSS supported games, and the only standouts I saw that certain people could be playing day in, day out and would want that advantage for more frames per second or more graphical fidelity would have to be Fortnite, Call of Duty, and as of filming this video, Escape from Tarkov. Though that third result, Escape from Tarkov, that's soon going to get FSR support, so that's going to maybe make up for the DLSS that's also in that game for AMD users. I really don't think DLSS should be a main point for this card in particular. If you look at how much the RX 6600 is bringing to the table for the same price, it just has so much more raw performance that you're going to need to rely on day in, day out. So with all that, at least in terms of gaming performance, I can only see the 3050 really being worth it for people who are gamers and creative professionals. And by that, I mean people who are using Premiere Pro, Photoshop a lot on their computers, or even STEM students who are using CUDA-supported rendering applications, and again, want to use those 2,560 CUDA cores with the RTX 3050 and run some games on the side, because that Radeon RX card isn't going to be able to support any of those accelerated applications with its current architecture. And for you streamers, no, if you're going to stream with a 3050, I would just get a multi-core CPU with your gaming PC, do X264 software-based encoding with your multi-core CPU, and just get that much faster RX 6600 right off the bat. I mean, if you're going to stream Valorant, that game doesn't support DLSS. Apex Legends doesn't support DLSS yet. Halo Infinite doesn't support DLSS yet. You just need that raw performance to run those games with more frames per second, and the 3050 in comparison to the 6600 is just going to fall flat more times than you think. So in short, for 90% of PC gamers, get a 6600 over the 3050. For you 9% of gamers who are severely addicted to Call of Duty and Fortnite, consider the 3050. Use DLSS, get that extra 30 frames per second. But then for that 1% of you who game and do creative work that use CUDA applications day in, day out, the 3050 might be worth it for you. So that is it for my review video on the 3050 with its updated pricing. And I just like to say a few things. One, it's really awesome to see graphics cards now going down in price and being more available and in stock for the average Joe, which is really positive to see. So I am a bit pepped up to make this video in comparison to what I'd be doing, say, last year. And secondly, thank you to Galax for being really patient with this review video for their really cool RTX 3050. And again, just a lot has been happening behind the scenes, and I appreciate that patience. And you know what, for letting me hold on to this card for a little bit longer than I needed to, and for providing this new updated review with updated pricing for now a more affordable RTX card. So that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and this is the ScatterVolt channel, signing out.